November 29th, 1944. 3:17 in the morning. The Pacific Ocean, dark as ink, cold as doubt. Four explosions tear through the silence. Four massive concussions that ripple across the water like the hand of God striking the face of the sea. Fire blooms orange against the black. Metal screams. Men scream louder. In 7 hours, the largest aircraft carrier ever built will rest at the bottom of the Pacific. 72,000 tons of steel hope and human ambition gone. A ship designed to survive 20 torpedo hits killed by 4. And the man who fired those torpedoes, Commander James Morrison, age 35, father of 2, graduate of Annapolis, husband to Margaret Morrison of Hartford, Connecticut. And 18 months earlier, the same officer who missed the easiest shot of the entire war, the shot that should have made him a hero. The shot that instead made him a cautionary tale whispered in officer clubs from Pearl Harbor to San Diego. The shot that cost him everything except his commission. That was May 1943. This is November 1944. This is the story of what happens when a man who has already failed gets one more chance, one more shot, one more moment to prove that the United States Navy was right to believe in second chances when every other Navy in the world had given up on that very American idea. This is the story of redemption written in fire and seawater. This is the story of the greatest submarine kill in naval history, and it begins with failure. Commander Morrison stands on the bridge of USS Barracuda submarine number 311, and he feels the weight of every decision he has ever made, pressing down on his shoulders like the ocean pressing down on the hull of his boat when she dives deep. It is November 28, 1944, 6 in the evening. The sun has just set over the Pacific, turning the sky the color of old bruises. Purple, gray, the kind of sky that promises storms or battles or both. Barracuda has been at sea for 14 days. This is her 5th war patrol under Morrison's command. 5th patrol, 15 months. And in all that time, nothing. 7 merchant ships, yes. Small targets, necessary targets. The kind of kills that keep the patrol log respectable but do nothing for a reputation. Nothing that erased May of 1943 from the memory of every man who knows what happened. Morrison is not a tall man, 5'9", wiry build, the kind of build you get from years of living in cramped submarine quarters where every meal is rationed and every moment is lived in tension. His hair, once dark brown, now shows threads of gray at the temples. Premature gray, the gray of stress and sleepless nights. His eyes are what people remember. Blue, the kind of blue that looks gray in certain light, the kind of blue that holds secrets. Right now, those eyes scan the horizon through binoculars that have served him since his first deployment. The binoculars are scratched. One lens has a small crack in the corner from when Barracuda took a depth charge too close and everything not bolted down when flying. Morrison kept them anyway. Some men are superstitious about their equipment. Morrison is superstitious about very little, but these binoculars have seen him through 4 patrols without catastrophe, without another catastrophe. Below deck, 60 men go about their duties, 60 souls, 60 Americans who have placed their lives in Morrison's hands because the United States Navy told them to, because the Navy believed that James Morrison had learned from his failure, had grown from it, had become a better commander because of it. Morrison wishes he believed that as strongly as the Navy does. Lieutenant Daniel Cooper approaches from the conning tower. Dan, age 28. Blonde hair that never quite stays regulation length. A smile that comes easy but has not been seen much lately. Dan is Morrison's executive officer. More importantly, Dan is the only man on Barracuda who was there in May of 43. The only witness to Morrison's shame who followed him to this boat. Dan does not mention it. Ever. That is what friendship means in the submarine service. Skipper, Dan says, and his voice carries that careful neutrality that executive officers perfect. The tone that says everything is routine, even when it is not. Radio picked up some traffic, Japanese fleet movements. Command thinks something big might be moving along the coast. Morrison lowers his binoculars. How big? They did not say, but the intercepts suggest priority routing. Multiple escort destroyers. Night transit. Something big. Morrison has heard this before. Barracuda has been positioned in Patrol Zone 7 for exactly this reason. Zone 7, the waters off Tokyo Bay. Dangerous waters, Waters where Japanese destroyers hunt submarines with methodical fury. Waters where American boats go to either make their reputation or end their career. Sometimes both. What is our fuel status, Morrison asks. 70%. We have range. Morrison nods. He does not speak for a moment. He is calculating. Distance, speed, intercept possibilities. This is what submarine commanders do. They calculate. They predict. They gamble with mathematics and hope the numbers are right. Morrison's numbers were wrong once. In May of 1943, his numbers were wrong by 3 knots. 3 knots of target speed miscalculation. That is all. Just 3 knots. The difference between a hit and a miss. The difference between glory and disgrace. 3 knots equals 3 nautical miles per hour. Over the course of 90 seconds, the time it takes a torpedo to travel 2,000 yards, at 46 knots. 3 knots of error translates to about 75 yards of displacement. 75 yards, the length of a house, the width of a small park. Enough for 4 torpedoes to pass harmlessly ahead of a Japanese aircraft carrier while Morrison watched through his periscope and felt his stomach turn to ice. Skipper, Morrison blinks, returns to the present. Sound general quarters, prepare to run on the surface at flank speed. If something big is moving, we are going to find it. Dan hesitates, just for a moment, just long enough for Morrison to notice. Permission to speak freely, sir. Morrison turns to face him. Always. The last time we chased priority traffic, we spent 2 days hunting shadows. Burned fuel, burned crew morale, found nothing. This is true. This happened 3 patrols ago. Morrison had received similar intelligence. Had positioned Barracuda perfectly. Had waited. Nothing came. The intelligence was wrong or outdated, or the target had changed routes. It happens. War is chaos pretending to be strategy, but it stays with you. The waiting, the anticipation, the letdown. I know, Morrison says quietly. Jim. Dan uses his first name now. They are alone on the bridge. Officer country privileges. You do not have to prove anything. Not to me, not to them. He gestures vaguely downward, indicating the crew below. Morrison is quiet for a long moment. The ocean moves beneath them. Swells rise and fall. The eternal rhythm of the Pacific. Yes, I do, he finally says. Maybe not to you, maybe not to them. But to myself, yes, I do. Dan nods. He understands. If you have never failed at something that mattered, you cannot understand the need for redemption. But if you have failed, truly failed, then you know. You know that the failure lives inside you like a parasite, feeding, growing, whispering. You know that the only cure is to face the same situation again. And this time, get it right, torpedoman. Second class Robert Chen, everyone calls him Bobby, sits in the torpedo room and writes a letter he hopes his wife will never read. Bobby is 22 years old, Chinese-American, born in San Francisco, raised in a laundry his parents owned until 1942 when the war started, and suddenly being Chinese meant being one of the good Asians, the ones fighting against Japan, instead of the ones being rounded up and sent to camps. Bobby joined the Navy because his father told him to. Show them you are American, his father said. More American than they are. So Bobby joined, took the tests, scored high, got assigned to submarine service, dangerous duty, volunteer only. He volunteered. And now he sits in the torpedo room of USS Barracuda, surrounded by 6 Mark 14 torpedoes that weigh 3,200 pounds each and carry 640 pounds of Torpex explosive. And he writes to Sarah. Sarah, his wife, 20 years old, 4 months pregnant. The letter is short. Bobby is not good with words. He writes about the weather, which is stupid, because the weather at sea is always the same. He writes about the food, which is also stupid, because the food on submarines is always either too salty or not salty enough. He writes about missing her, which is the only true thing in the letter. He does not write about the nightmares. Does not write about waking up in his bunk, soaked in sweat, convinced the boat is flooding. Does not write about the way his hands shake every time they load torpedoes, wondering if this is the time one of them malfunctions and detonates in the tube and kills everyone aboard. He does not write about Commander Morrison and the story everyone knows but nobody mentions. The story of May 43, the story of the miss. Instead, Bobby writes, "I hope the baby is healthy. I hope you picked a name. I hope I am there when she is born. I love you, Bobby." He seals the letter in an envelope, writes Sarah's address in San Diego. The letter will sit in his locker until they return to port. If they return to port. Across the torpedo room, Chief Petty Officer Harold Mackenzie, everyone calls him Mac, watches Bobby seal the envelope and says nothing. Mac is 45 years old, ancient by submarine standards. Most submariners are in their 20s. Mac has been doing this since 1941. 4 years, 7 boats. He has seen things, done things, survived things that should have killed him. He has also seen commanders like Morrison before, the hungry ones, the ones with something to prove. Those commanders are dangerous, not because they are reckless, but because they are the opposite of reckless. They are careful to the point of obsession. They check everything twice, calculate everything 3 times, second guess every decision. And then when the moment comes when the shot presents itself, they do not hesitate, cannot hesitate, because hesitation is what caused the failure the first time. Men like Morrison either redeem themselves spectacularly or die trying. Mac has served under 3 commanders like that. 2 redeemed themselves. 1 died along with his entire crew when he pushed too hard on a bad torpedo run and took a depth charge spread that cracked the pressure hull like an eggshell. Mac wonders which category Morrison will fall into. The general quarters alarm sounds, a klaxon that vibrates through the metal skin of the boat. Men scramble. Training takes over. Bobby Chen secures his letter and moves to his battle station. Mac heads to the engine room. Something is happening. It's 8:48 in the evening. Barracuda running on the surface at 18 knots. Maximum sustainable speed. The diesel engines roar. The boat cuts through the Pacific swell, throwing spray across the deck. In the cramped radar compartment, Seaman James Wilson hunches over the radar scope. The scope is new technology. Most submarines do not have it yet. Barracuda got hers 6 months ago. The radar can detect surface contacts up to 25,000 yards in good conditions. Tonight the conditions are good. Wilson sees the blip before he believes it. Multiple contacts, large, moving fast. He checks the scope again. Adjusts the gain. The contacts remain. "Contact," he calls out. His voice cracks. He is 19. Bearing 090, range 25,000 yards. Multiple ships, fast movers. Morrison is in the conning tower in 3 seconds. "Confirm." Wilson confirms. 4 contacts, 1 large, 3 smaller. Estimate speed 18 to 20 knots. Course southwest. Morrison climbs to the bridge, raises his binoculars, scans the horizon at bearing 090. At first, nothing, just darkness and the faint line where the black ocean meets the black sky. Then he sees them, shapes, silhouettes against the stars, 4 ships, 3 clearly destroyers. The 4th, Morrison has been hunting submarines in the Pacific for 2 years. He knows every major Japanese ship class by silhouette: battleships, cruisers, carriers, destroyers. He has memorized recognition manuals until he could draw them in his sleep. The 4th silhouette does not match anything in the manual. Too large for a cruiser, too wide for a battleship. The flight deck stretches longer than anything he has ever seen. The island superstructure rises like a mountain. This is an aircraft carrier, but not just any carrier. This is massive. Bigger than Shokaku, bigger than Zuikaku, bigger than anything the Japanese are supposed to have. Morrison's heartbeat accelerates. His hands tighten on the binoculars. He thinks about the intelligence reports from 2 months ago. Reports most commanders dismissed. Reports about a supercarrier under construction at Yokosuka Naval Arsenal. A carrier built on a battleship hull. A carrier that would displace over 70,000 tons. Most of the submarine force thought it was propaganda, Japanese misinformation. The kind of phantom ship that intelligence analysts put in reports to justify their existence. Morrison studied those reports, read them 3 times, calculated what routes such a ship would take if it actually existed, where it would go, when it would move. He gambled his patrol on those reports being true. And now, 25,000 yards away, moving at 20 knots through the darkness, is proof that his gamble might pay off. Dan Cooper joins him on the bridge, looks through his own binoculars. Says nothing for 10 seconds. Then, Jesus Christ. Morrison does not respond. He is calculating. Range, speed, angle. The target is moving at approximately 20 knots. Barracuda can make 18 knots maximum on the surface. Pursuit is impossible. Direct interception is impossible. But Morrison does not need to chase it. He needs to predict where it is going. Navigator, Morrison calls down. Plot a course to Key Strait. Calculate where a target doing 20 knots from our current contact position will be in 3 hours. Key Strait, the passage between Honshu and Shikoku Islands. The gateway to the inland sea. The route to Kure Naval Base, one of Japan's largest protected anchorages. If this carrier is heading anywhere safe, it is heading to Kure. And to get to Kure, it must pass through Key Strait. Morrison is betting everything on that assumption. Helm come to course 090, all ahead flank. We are going to get ahead of them. Dan understands immediately. If you are wrong, then we waste a night and some fuel, Morrison says. If I am right, we get a shot at the biggest target anyone has ever engaged. And if we get the shot, Morrison lowers his binoculars, looks at Dan. His face is calm, too calm, the calm of a man who has already made peace with whatever comes next. Then I do not miss. For 3.5 hours, Barracuda runs at maximum speed. The engines scream. The boat shakes. The crew, most of them below deck, wonder what is happening. Command does not share details. Submariners learn not to ask. In the engine room, Mac watches the temperature gauges climb. Engine number 2 is running hot. Not critical yet, but approaching. In the torpedo room, Bobby Chen checks each fish for the 3rd time. Tubes 1 through 6, forward tubes, all loaded, all armed, ready. On the bridge, Morrison stands motionless. Wind tears at his face. Spray soaks his jacket. He does not move. His eyes fixed on the horizon ahead, looking for something he cannot yet see. Dan brings him coffee at 10:30. The coffee is terrible. Submarine coffee always is. Too long on the burner. Too much salt in the water used to make it. Morrison drinks it anyway. We lost radar contact an hour ago, Dan says quietly. Morrison knows. The target moved out of radar range. They are now running on pure calculation. Pure faith that Morrison's navigation is correct. Pure hope that the Japanese carrier is actually heading to Key Strait. Every minute they run, a minute they cannot get back. Every gallon of fuel burned is a gallon they will not have for the return journey. Every moment spent chasing a prediction is a moment not spent hunting confirmed targets. This is the essence of submarine warfare. You cannot chase, you can only predict position and wait. Morrison has predicted. Morrison is positioning. Now comes the wait. 12:10 in the morning, November 29th. Just after midnight, Barracuda has been running south for 3 hours and 40 minutes. The crew is exhausted. The engines are straining. Morrison's coffee has gone cold. Dan approaches again. Skipper, we have been running on assumptions for almost 4 hours. If the target is not where you think it will be, we need to consider turning back to our patrol zone. Morrison does not lower his binoculars. 10 more minutes. Jim? 10 more minutes, Dan. Then if we have nothing, we turn back. Dan nods, leaves Morrison alone on the bridge. Morrison counts the minutes in his head, counts his heartbeats, wonders if this is it. The moment his second chance dies. The moment he proves that the Navy was wrong to believe in him. That redemption is a fantasy, that some failures cannot be overcome. He thinks about Margaret, his wife, the letter she wrote him during those 6 months when he was assigned to a desk at Pearl Harbor. The letter he has carried in his pocket ever since. The letter he has never shown anyone. The letter that says, I married a man who knows how to get back up. Show me I was right. 8 minutes pass. Then the radar operator's voice crackles over the intercom. Contact, bearing 270, range 2,000 yards. Morrison does not move for 3 seconds. Just stands there, breathing, feeling the weight lift off his shoulders and redistribute itself into something new, something harder, something final. He was right. The target is exactly where he calculated it would be. Now comes the hard part. Now comes the shot. Diving officer, Morrison says, his voice absolutely calm. Take us down to periscope depth. Rig for silent running. Make ready all forward tubes. The klaxon sounds. Men scramble. Barracuda's bow dips as she floods her ballast tanks and slips beneath the surface, the ocean closing over her like a cold blanket. 60 feet, trim angle adjusting, the submarine finding her equilibrium in the dark water. The hunt has begun. This is the moment to pause, to recognize, to honor. For those of you watching who served in the Pacific during the Second World War, you know what this moment means. You know what it feels like to commit to an action knowing there is no going back. You know the weight of command, the burden of decision, the responsibility for the men whose lives depend on whether you calculated correctly. If you served on submarines, you know this feeling even more acutely. The descent into darkness, the silence of the deep, the knowledge that you are hunting something larger and more powerful than yourself, and that the only advantage you have is surprise and mathematics. If you or someone you knew served on boats like Barracuda, share your story in the comments. Tell us about the commanders you served under. Tell us about the moments that defined your service. We read every comment. We honor every story, because this is not just history. This is memory, your service, your sacrifice, and we do not forget. Barracuda settles at 60 feet, periscope depth. The boat becomes silent. Every non-essential system powered down. Men move on tiptoe if they move at all. Sound travels through water. Sound means death. Morrison moves to the periscope. The attack periscope, smaller than the search periscope, harder to spot from the surface. He grasps the handles, puts his eye to the lens, and for the first time he sees his target clearly. She is enormous. The flight deck stretches almost 900 feet, longer than 3 football fields laid end to end. The hull displaces water in a way that creates a bow wave visible even in the darkness. The island's superstructure rises 7 stories high. Morrison has studied silhouettes of every Japanese carrier: Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, Shokaku, Zuikaku, all the carriers that struck Pearl Harbor, all the carriers that fought at Midway. This is none of them. This is something new, something the intelligence reports barely hinted at. Something so large, it should not be possible. This is Yamashiro, the largest aircraft carrier ever built. Though Morrison does not know her name, will not know her name for months. Right now, she is just target, just the biggest prize any submarine commander has ever had in his crosshairs. And escorting her are 3 destroyers. Professional, alert, pinging active sonar every 30 seconds. Morrison does a quick calculation: target size, speed, distance, escort positions, approach vectors. This will not be easy. This will not be clean. This will require him to do everything perfectly, calculate perfectly, execute perfectly. No mistakes, no miscalculations, no 3-knot errors. He lowers the periscope, looks at Dan. "We are going in," Morrison says. Dan swallows, nods. Morrison turns to address the crew over the intercom. Every man on the boat will hear this. Every man needs to know. "This is the captain. We have contact with a large enemy carrier and escorts. We are commencing an attack approach. This will be dangerous. The target is protected and alert. But if we do this right, if we work together, if we trust our training, we will sink the biggest target any American submarine has ever engaged." He pauses, thinks about what to say next, thinks about May of 1943. "I will not lie to you. I have missed before. Some of you know that. All of you deserve to know that. But I learned from that failure. I learned to check my calculations twice, to trust my instincts less and mathematics more, to never assume I am right until the torpedoes hit." Another pause. The boat is absolutely silent, 60 men holding their breath. "I will not miss this time. That is my promise to every man on this boat. I will not miss again." He releases the intercom. The words hang in the air. Dan looks at him. "Hell of a speech, Skipper." Morrison shakes his head. "It was not a speech. It was a promise, and I intend to keep it." He returns to the periscope, begins the stalk. 40 minutes until firing position. 40 minutes to close from 12,000 yards to less than 2,000. 40 minutes of creeping through dark water while destroyers hunt above. 40 minutes until Morrison gets his second chance. And this time the shot will not miss. This time everything changes. 60 feet below the surface of the Pacific Ocean, USS Barracuda becomes a ghost. This is what silent running means. This is what hunting means. Every unnecessary system powered down. Every light dimmed to minimum. Every man moving as if the deck beneath his feet were made of glass that might shatter at the slightest misstep. Sound is the enemy now. Sound travels through water 4 times faster than through air. A dropped wrench can be heard by sonar 3 miles away. A slammed hatch can alert every destroyer within 5 miles. Even breathing too loudly, even a heartbeat pounding too hard against a rib cage feels dangerous. The crew knows this. They have trained for this. But training and reality are different countries separated by an ocean of fear. In the control room, Morrison stands at the periscope. His hands rest on the handles with the gentleness of a man holding something precious. His eye pressed to the lens, his breathing slow and measured. Through the periscope, he can see the target, Yamashiro, though he still does not know her name. To him, she is simply the largest ship he has ever seen through a periscope lens. The flight deck stretches away into darkness. The bow cuts through the Pacific swell with the confidence of something that believes itself invulnerable. The island superstructure rises like a steel mountain, lights glowing from portholes and deck levels. Inside that mountain are over 2,000 men, Japanese sailors, sons, husbands, fathers. Men who woke up this morning believing they were safe aboard an unsinkable ship. Morrison does not think about them as people, cannot think about them as people. In submarine warfare, you do not kill men. You kill tonnage. You kill displacement. You kill strategic assets. If you think about the men you cannot fire, the 3 escort destroyers circle the carrier like wolves protecting their pack leader. Professional patterns, overlapping sonar coverage. These are experienced warships. These are ships that have hunted submarines before. These are ships that have killed submarines before. Morrison lowers the periscope, looks at Dan Cooper. "Range," Morrison asks, his voice barely above a whisper. Even inside the boat, sound discipline matters. The habit of silence becomes total. Dan checks the plotting table. 1,000 yards. Target speed 18 knots. Course 240. Zigzagging every 4 to 5 minutes. 11,000 yards. That is 6¼ nautical miles. Too far. Much too far for an accurate shot. Especially against a target that is zigzagging. Especially with destroyer escorts actively hunting. Morrison needs to get closer, needs to cut that distance in half, needs to position Barracuda where a spread of 6 torpedoes will have the highest probability of multiple hits. But every yard closer increases the risk of detection. Every yard closer brings them into the active sonar range of those destroyers. Every yard closer is a yard they might not be able to retreat from if things go wrong. This is the mathematics of submarine warfare. Risk versus reward. Probability versus possibility. Death versus glory. Morrison has done this calculation before. In May of 1943, he calculated wrong. He will not calculate wrong this time. "Come to course 235, Morrison orders. "All ahead, dead slow. Make your depth 6-5 feet. Dead slow, that is 2 knots, barely moving. Just enough forward momentum to maintain depth control and steering. Slow enough to minimize cavitation noise from the propellers. Slow enough that Barracuda becomes almost invisible in the water. Almost invisible. Not quite. Nothing is ever quite invisible in war. The boat creeps forward. 2 knots, the speed of a man walking slowly. At this speed, it will take nearly 2 hours to close from 11,000 yards to 2,000 yards. Morrison does not have 2 hours. The target is moving. The target is zigzagging. The geometry of interception is constantly changing. He needs to predict, needs to calculate not where the target is, but where it will be, needs to position Barracuda in the path of the carrier's base course, so that when Yamashiro completes her next zig and returns to base heading, she will sail directly toward the firing point. This requires understanding the zigzag pattern, requires tracking at least 3 complete cycles, requires mathematics and intuition in equal measure. Morrison raises the periscope again, watches, times the course changes, 4 minutes on one heading, then a turn, 4 minutes on the new heading, then back. The base course is 240 southwest, exactly as predicted, heading for Key Strait. heading for Kure. Morrison was right about the destination. Now he needs to be right about everything else. In the forward torpedo room, Bobby Chen sits on the deck between tubes 3 and 4 and tries not to think about the fact that he might die in the next hour. This is harder than it sounds. Death is everywhere on a submarine. Death in the pressure hull that keeps out the ocean. Death in the high-pressure air systems that could explode if mishandled. Death in the batteries that produce hydrogen gas if overcharged. Death in the diesel fuel that is one spark away from immolation. Death in the torpedoes themselves, 3,000 pounds of metal and explosive that sometimes malfunction and detonate prematurely. And death in the enemy destroyers above hunting with sonar and depth charges in the methodical patience of professional killers. Bobby touches his pocket where Sarah's letter sits, the letter he will mail when they return to Pearl Harbor. If they return to Pearl Harbor, that word is doing a lot of work tonight. The torpedo room is cramped. 6 Mark 14 torpedoes rest in their tubes. Each torpedo is 20 feet long, 21 inches in diameter. Each one weighs as much as a car. Each one is a precisely calibrated instrument of destruction that costs more than most Americans make in 5 years. And each one is Bobby's responsibility. Bobby and his 2 teammates, Torpedo Man First Class Williams and Torpedo Man Third Class Rodriguez. 3 men responsible for 6 weapons that might in the next hour change the course of the war. Or might miss entirely, might run deep, might run shallow, might fail to arm, might fail to detonate, might do any of a dozen things that torpedoes sometimes do when they malfunction. The Mark 14 has a reputation, not a good reputation. Early in the war, the Mark 14 was famous for running too deep, for having a magnetic exploder that triggered prematurely or not at all, for making circular runs that sometimes came back and sank the submarine that fired it. Most of those problems have been fixed now. Most, not all. Bobby has checked each torpedo 3 times already. We'll probably check them twice more before firing. This is what you do when your life depends on machines working perfectly. Williams, age 32, veteran of 10 war patrols, sits against the bulkhead sharpening his knife. This is what Williams always does before action. The rhythmic scrape of steel on wet stone. The meditation of an old ritual. Rodriguez, age 19, youngest man in the torpedo room, youngest man on the boat, stares at the deck and mumbles prayers in Spanish. Hail Mary, full of grace, over and over. Bobby wants to tell Rodriguez that prayer will not help if a depth charge cracks the hull. Wants to tell him that there are no atheists in foxholes, but there are plenty of dead religious people at the bottom of the ocean. But Bobby says nothing. Let Rodriguez have his prayers. Let Williams have his knife. Let each man face the next hour however he needs to face it. Bobby himself just sits, breathes, thinks about Sarah, thinks about the baby, thinks about the name Lucy if it is a girl, Michael if it is a boy, thinks about whether his child will have a father. The intercom crackles. Morrison's voice, calm, too calm. Torpedo room control, status report. Williams answers. All tubes ready, all fish checked and rechecked. We are green across the board, skipper. Good, stand by, we are beginning approach. Estimate 40 minutes to firing point. 40 minutes, 2,400 seconds. Bobby starts counting. In the engine room, Chief Petty Officer Mack watches temperature gauges and thinks about the commanders he has served under. 7 boats, 4 years, 14 war patrols. Mack has seen enough submarine combat to know that luck matters more than skill, but skill matters more than courage, and courage matters more than anything else when the depth charges start falling. He has served under careful commanders and reckless commanders, under brilliant tacticians and barely competent fools, under men who brought their boats home and men who did not. Commander Morrison falls into a category Mack has only seen twice before. The Redeemer, the officer haunted by past failure who will either achieve spectacular vindication or die in spectacular fashion, trying. The first Redeemer Mack served under was Lieutenant Commander Hastings aboard USS Stingray in 1942. Hastings had lost his first boat to a depth charge attack after a failed torpedo run. Got a second boat, spent 8 months proving himself, finally got a perfect shot at a Japanese cruiser, fired 6 torpedoes, all 6 hit. The cruiser sank in 4 minutes. Hastings became a legend. The second Redeemer was Commander Patterson aboard USS Wahoo In 1943, Patterson had been relieved of command after a collision that was ruled his fault. Got assigned to Wahoo, spent 6 months hunting redemption, found it in the form of a Japanese convoy, attacked surface, at night, against 4 escort destroyers, sank 2 transports, damaged a destroyer, then took a shell through the conning tower and died along with 6 crew members before they could dive. Patterson got his redemption but did not live to enjoy it. Mac wonders which type Morrison will be. Hastings or Patterson? Legend or cautionary tale? The thing about redeemers Mac knows is that they cannot accept normal success, cannot accept a safe shot, cannot accept the prudent decision. They need the spectacular, need the vindication to be so complete, so undeniable that it erases all doubt about whether they deserve a second chance. This makes them dangerous, not to the enemy, to themselves, to their crews. Engine number 2 is still running hot, not critical, not yet, but approaching. Mac makes a minor adjustment to the coolant flow. Watches the gauge. The temperature stabilizes. Good. They will need both engines at full power when they run, when the destroyers come hunting after the torpedoes hit. If the torpedoes hit. Mac has been doing this long enough to know that nothing is certain in submarine warfare. You can do everything right and still miss, can calculate perfectly and still fail, can fire the perfect shot and watch the torpedoes malfunction, or you can do everything wrong and sink the target anyway. War is chaos. Victory is luck wearing a uniform. But Mac will say this for Commander Morrison. The man is thorough, checks everything twice, calculates 3 times, does not take unnecessary risks. Except for this one, attacking a supercarrier with destroyer escorts. That is a necessary risk. The kind of risk that justifies being in a submarine in enemy waters in the first place. Mac just hopes Morrison remembers that living to tell the story is better than dying in glory. Though Mac supposes Morrison might disagree. 20 minutes into the approach. Range has closed to 8,000 yards. Morrison raises the periscope every 5 minutes, just for seconds at a time. Up, look down, up, look down. The less time the periscope is raised, the less chance of visual detection. Through those brief glimpses, he tracks the target, plots the zigzag pattern, confirms his calculations. The pattern is consistent. 4 minutes on heading 255, turn. 4 minutes on heading 225, turn. Back to base course, 240. This consistency is both blessing and curse. Blessing because it makes the target predictable. Curse because consistent zigzagging is effective defense against submarines. It forces the attacker to either get very close or accept lower hit probability. Morrison intends to get very close. Dan updates the plot every 2 minutes. Marks target position. Marks Barracuda position. Draws the intercept geometry. On paper, it looks simple. 2 lines converging. But reality is 3-dimensional. Reality includes current. Reality includes the possibility that the target will deviate from pattern. Reality includes destroyers. Speaking of destroyers, the sonar operator Seaman Phillips calls out softly, destroyer bearing 045, range 3,000 yards. Active pinging, moving left to right. 3,000 yards, less than 2 miles. That destroyer is close. Close enough that if it turns toward Barracuda and goes active with focused sonar, it will detect them. Acknowledge, Morrison says. Maintain course and speed. This is the gamble. Keep moving toward firing position and hope the destroyer does not turn their way, or break off, evade, and lose the attack opportunity. Morrison does not break off. Morrison continues the approach. This is what redeemers do. The destroyer passes. Range opens to 4,000 yards. 5,000. The threat recedes. Morrison breathes, realizes he was holding his breath, forces himself to breathe normally, cannot afford to show stress. The crew watches their captain. If the captain is calm, the crew is calm. If the captain shows fear, fear spreads through the boat like poison gas. So Morrison is calm, outwardly, perfectly, completely calm. Inside his heart pounds. Inside the memory of May 1943 plays on repeat. Inside doubt whispers. What if you miscalculate again? What if the target is faster than you think? What if the torpedoes malfunction? What if this is just another failure wearing a different uniform? Morrison silences the doubt, focuses on the mathematics. Mathematics does not lie. Mathematics does not fail. Only men fail, and Morrison will not fail. Not this time. 30 minutes into the approach. Range 4,000 yards. The target is enormous through the periscope now. Morrison can see individual details, can see the flight deck, can see aircraft parked aft, can see anti-aircraft guns, can see men moving on deck. Tiny figures, ant-sized, human-sized. He forces himself to look away from the men, focuses on the ship, on the geometry, on the angle. Dan provides continuous updates. Range 3800 yards, target speed 18 knots, bearing 265, angle on the bow 70 degrees starboard, angle on the bow. This is critical. This number determines how much of the ship's length is exposed to torpedoes. 0 degrees means the ship is pointed directly at you. 90 degrees means full broadside. 70 degrees is good, very good. Presents a large target area. But 4,000 yards is still too far. Morrison needs half that. Come left to course 230, maintain depth. Barracuda inches closer. 2 knots. Dead quiet. A steel tube filled with men and weapons and hope, creeping through dark water toward an enemy that still does not know they exist. 3,500 yards. 3,000 yards. Now the destroyer pattern becomes critical. One destroyer is ahead of the carrier. One on the starboard beam. One trailing. Barracuda is approaching from the port quarter. The gap in coverage. But that gap is narrow. If Morrison miscalculates the approach angle, if Barracuda strays too far left, the trailing destroyer will detect them. Too far right, and the starboard beam destroyer will ping them. Thread the needle. This is what submarine commanders do. Thread needles in the dark while the enemy looks for you. Phillips reports, destroyer bearing 090, range 2500 yards. Active pinging. Constant bearing. Constant bearing. That means the destroyer is pointed directly at them, but not yet closing. Not yet. Just pinging, searching, listening. Morrison does not alter course. Maintains the approach. Accepts the risk. 2,500 yards. The destroyer ahead of the carrier turns. Begins a sweep pattern. This is dangerous. If that destroyer sweeps across Barracuda's position, detection is almost certain. Morrison watches through the periscope, times the destroyer's turn, calculates its new heading. The destroyer will pass ahead. Close, very close, but ahead, probably. 2,200 yards. The crew is absolutely silent now. No one speaks unless necessary. No one moves unless required. 60 men frozen in place like statues, breathing, waiting, praying to whatever gods submariners pray to. Bobby Chen in the torpedo room thinks about Sarah, about Lucy, about Michael, about names for children he might never meet. Mac in the engine room watches his gauges and remembers Lieutenant Commander Hastings and Commander Patterson and wonders which one Morrison will become. Dan Cooper at the plotting table draws lines and erases lines and redraws lines. And with each line, he thinks about his friend Jim Morrison and the shot that destroyed his confidence and whether this shot will restore it. And Morrison at the periscope watches the largest target any submarine has ever engaged sail closer and thinks about mathematics and redemption and whether the United States Navy was right to believe in second chances. 2,000 yards. Prepare to fire, Morrison says quietly. Final bearing and shoot. This is it. This is the moment. Everything that came before led here. Everything that comes after depends on the next 90 seconds. Dan moves to the torpedo data computer. This is a mechanical analog computer that calculates firing solutions. Target speed, target bearing, target angle, Barracuda speed, Barracuda bearing, torpedo speed, gyro angles. All of it comes together in the TDC. All of it produces a solution, a prediction, a best guess wrapped in mathematics about where to aim so that torpedoes fired now will intercept a target that is there later. It is beautiful and terrifying in its precision. Solution ready, Dan says, his voice steady despite everything. Range 1800 yards. Target speed 18 knots. Angle on bow 70 degrees starboard. Recommend spread 2 degrees. 2-degree spread. This means the 6 torpedoes will be aimed slightly differently, fanning out to cover a wider area. If the target speed estimate is slightly off, at least some torpedoes should still hit. This is insurance against miscalculation. This is insurance against May of 1943. Morrison considers 1,800 yards, just over a mile. Not quite close enough. He wants under 1,500 yards, wants the geometry perfect. But the destroyers are closing, time is running out, the window of opportunity is narrowing, and sometimes good enough has to be good enough. No, Morrison rejects that thought immediately. Good enough is what leads to failure. Good enough is what leads to torpedoes passing harmlessly ahead of the target. Good enough is what haunts you for 18 months. Perfect or nothing. Hold firing solution, Morrison says. Come right to course 245. All ahead 1/3, close to 1400 yards. Dan looks at him. Just for a moment, just long enough for Morrison to see the concern. 1,400 yards. That is close. That is very close. That is inside the protective destroyer screen. That is suicide range if something goes wrong. Skipper, Dan says quietly, that destroyer on the starboard beam. At 1,400 yards, we will be inside his active sonar range. If he pings in our direction, he will paint us bright as day. Morrison knows this, has calculated this, accepts this. I need the range, Morrison says simply. I will not miss because I was too cautious. Dan nods, understands. This is what redeemers do. They push to the edge because anything less feels like compromise. Barracuda creeps closer. 1,700 yards. 1,600 yards. Phillips reports. Destroyer bearing 070, range 2200 yards. He is turning. Coming to new course. New course 260. He is turning toward us. The destroyer has detected something. Maybe not Barracuda specifically, maybe just a suspicion, a sonar ghost, a temperature gradient in the water. But something caught its attention and now it is investigating. Morrison has seconds to decide. Abort the approach and evade, or continue and hope the destroyer does not get a solid contact before torpedoes are away. He thinks about May of 1943, about being too cautious, about second-guessing, about hesitation. He thinks about Margaret's letter, show me I was right. He thinks about the 60 men on this boat who trusted the United States Navy when the Navy told them Commander Morrison deserved another chance. Morrison decides, maintain course and speed. Prepare all tubes for firing. 1,500 yards. 1,400 yards. Final bearing, Morrison says, his voice cold as the ocean outside, cold as certainty. Mark. Dan reads the bearing, enters it into the TDC. The solution updates. Solution locked, range 1400 yards, target speed 18 knots, bearing 267, angle on bow 68 degrees starboard, all tubes ready. Morrison looks through the periscope one last time, sees the massive carrier, sees the men on deck, sees the flight deck that could launch aircraft that could kill American sailors, sees the steel and armor and the symbol of Japanese naval power, sees the target he has traveled 5,000 miles to sink, sees redemption. He thinks about his wife, his children, his crew, his failure, his second chance. He thinks about the mathematics that must be perfect. He thinks about 3 knots of error and how he will never make that mistake again. And then Commander James Morrison places his hand on the firing trigger and speaks 4 words that will echo through naval history. Fire 1, 4 seconds. Fire 2, 4 seconds. Fire 3, 4 seconds. Fire 4, 4 seconds. Fire Pinanunu, 4 seconds. Fire 6. 6 Mark 14 torpedoes leave USS Barracuda, each one 20 feet long, each one carrying 640 pounds of Torpex explosive, each one running at 46 knots toward the biggest target any of them will ever hit. All fish running hot, straight, and normal. Take us deep, Morrison orders. 200 feet, right full rudder, all ahead flank. Get us out of here. Barracuda dives. The electric motors surge to full power. The boat angles down and turns hard right, fleeing the scene as fast as silence allows. Now comes the wait. 90 seconds. 90 seconds for the torpedoes to travel 1,400 yards. 90 seconds to know whether Morrison's second chance ends in vindication or another failure. The crew counts silently. Some men pray, some men just breathe. Morrison stands motionless at the periscope station. Eyes closed, hands clenched. Waiting. Bobby Chen in the torpedo room holds Sarah's letter against his chest. Mac in the engine room watches his gauges and remembers other commanders and other shots. Dan Cooper at the plotting table stares at the lines he drew and thinks about friendship and faith and whether belief is enough. 60 seconds, 70 seconds, 80 seconds. And then the first explosion echoes through Barracuda's hull. A deep, satisfying boom that resonates through steel and water and flesh. Hit. 5 seconds later, the second explosion. Hit. 5 seconds after that, the third explosion. Hit. 4 seconds more. The fourth explosion. Hit. 4 hits, 4 out of 6. 67% hit rate at 1,400 yards against a zigzagging target with destroyer escorts. The crew erupts in subdued cheers. Men embrace. Bobby Chen laughs and cries simultaneously. Mac allows himself a slight smile. Dan Cooper looks at Morrison. Morrison opens his eyes. His face shows nothing. No triumph, no relief, nothing. Just the cold certainty of a man who knew exactly what would happen because he calculated it perfectly. Secure from battle stations, Morrison says quietly. Rig for depth charges. They are coming for us now. And he is right. Above them, the destroyers have heard the explosions, have seen their massive carriers shudder from 4 torpedo impacts, have begun the hunt, but Morrison's job is done. The shot is made. The torpedoes hit. Redemption achieved. Now they just have to survive long enough to tell the story. 3:17 in the morning, November 29, 1944. Aboard the Japanese aircraft carrier, Yamashiro Seaman, Akira Yoshida is dreaming of his mother's garden in Hokkaido. Dreams of chrysanthemums. Dreams of the way morning light filters through pine trees. Dreams of being 19 years old and home instead of at sea aboard a ship so large it feels like an island. The first explosion ends the dream. The blast lifts Akira from his bunk and slams him against the bulkhead. Lights flicker. The deck tilts. Somewhere in the darkness, men scream. Before Akira can orient himself, before he can understand what is happening, the second explosion hits, then the third, then the fourth. 4 massive concussions in rapid succession. Each one a fist of water and explosive pressure punching through steel plate that was supposed to withstand anything. Each one tearing open compartments that were supposed to remain sealed. Each one flooding spaces that were supposed to stay dry. The alarm klaxon sounds. Battle stations. Damage control. All hands. Akira pulls on his boots. No time for socks. No time for anything except the training that has been drilled into him since he stepped aboard this ship 10 days ago. 10 days. He has been at sea for 10 days. This is his first voyage. This is supposed to be a simple transit. Yokosuka to Kure, 340 miles along the Japanese coast. Protected waters. 3 destroyer escorts. Nothing to worry about. The American submarines do not operate this close to Japan. That is what the officers said. That is what everyone believed. Everyone was wrong. Akira runs through the passageway. The deck is tilted. Not much, maybe 5 degrees, but enough to notice, enough to make running feel wrong. Water sloshes around his boots, ankle deep already. Where is it coming from? A petty officer grabs him. Older man, maybe 35, face covered in oil. Yoshida damage control party to boiler room 5 now. Akira runs, down ladders, through hatches, following other men who are also running. The ship feels alive beneath them, groaning, shuddering, like a wounded animal trying to understand what hurt it. Boiler room 5 is chaos. Water pouring in from somewhere. Steam hissing from ruptured pipes. Men working frantically with patches and hammers and wooden plugs and anything they can find to stop the flooding. A chief engineer points. That bulkhead water is coming through the seams. Get material. Pack it. Stop the flow. Akira and 5 other sailors grab canvas and oakum and anything else available. They stuff it into the seams where water jets through. But as soon as they plug one leak, two more appear. The water pressure is finding every weakness, every gap, every place where the bulkhead is not perfectly sealed. And there are many such places. Because Yamashiro left the shipyard early. Because the war demanded it. Because American B-29 bombers were getting close to Yokosuka. Because someone in Tokyo decided that an incomplete ship at sea was better than a complete ship destroyed in port. That decision is killing Yamashiro now. On the bridge, Captain Hiroshi Tanaka receives damage reports and feels the weight of command become the weight of failure. 4 torpedo hits, all starboard side. Boiler rooms 3 and 4 completely flooded. Boiler room 5 flooding. Forward storage compartments breached. Aft machinery spaces damaged. This should be survivable. Yamashiro was designed to survive 20 torpedo hits. 20. The ship has redundant compartmentalization, multiple pumping systems, armor belt thick enough to stop battleship shells. 4 torpedoes should not sink her. Except Chief Engineer Kenzo Watanabe arrives on the bridge. His uniform soaked, his face pale. Tanaka has known Watanabe for 12 years, served with him on 3 previous ships. He has never seen Watanabe look frightened. Watanabe is frightened now. "Captain," Watanabe says, his voice shaking, "we have a problem. The water is spreading faster than calculated. The bulkhead doors, many of them are not sealing properly." Tanaka feels ice in his stomach. "What do you mean not sealing, Bernthal?" "I mean they were not fully installed. I mean there are gaps, small gaps, 2 millimeters, 3 millimeters. But at this pressure, those gaps become rivers. The water is flowing into compartments that were not hit by torpedoes." Tanaka stares at him, understanding dawning. "How many doors?" 15, maybe 20. I discovered this before we left Yokosuka. I tried to report it, but..." He does not finish. He does not need to. Tanaka knows what happened. The orders came from Tokyo. Move the ship, now, no delays. The Americans are coming. So they move the ship, incomplete, unready. And now men are dying because of that decision. "Can we contain it?" Tanaka asks. Watanabe hesitates. That hesitation tells Tanaka everything. Maybe, Watanabe finally says, "If we can get the pumps ahead of the flooding, if no more doors fail, if..." Too many ifs. Tanaka makes a decision. Reduce speed to 15 knots, less water pressure on the breaches. Deploy all damage control parties. Get ahead of this. Watanabe nods and leaves. Tanaka turns to Lieutenant Kenji Sato, his executive officer. "Order the destroyers to hunt that submarine," Tanaka says. "I want depth charges. I want that American boat sent to the bottom." Sato relays the order. The destroyers peel off, racing to where they think the attack originated. Sonar pinging, depth charges ready. But Tanaka knows it is probably too late. The American commander, whoever he is already running deep, already evading, already escaping. Good tactics, professional, the mark of an experienced submarine captain. Tanaka would respect it if it were not killing his ship. 4:17 in the morning, 1 hour after the torpedo impacts. The list has increased to 10 degrees. Noticeable now. Walking on the deck requires compensation. Equipment slides slowly starboard unless secured. Akira and his damage control party have been working for an hour straight, plugging leaks, shoring up bulkheads, bailing water with buckets when the pumps cannot keep up. 3 men from his party have been sent to the infirmary. 1 fell and broke his arm when the deck tilted suddenly. 1 collapsed from heat exhaustion in the steam-filled compartments. 1 breathed too much vaporized fuel loss and started vomiting blood. Akira is young, strong. He keeps working, keeps plugging leaks, keeps believing that if they just work hard enough, they can save the ship. This is what 19-year-olds believe. That effort matters more than physics. That determination can overcome mathematics. The older sailors know better, but they work anyway. Because what else is there to do? In the engine room, the chief engineers monitor the pumps. 6 main bilge pumps working at full capacity. Thousands of gallons per minute being lifted from the flooded compartments and discharged overboard. But the water keeps rising. Not fast, but steady, inexorable. The pumps are losing the race. Watanabe reports to Tanaka again. "We are pumping 2,000 gallons per minute. We estimate inflow at 3,000 gallons per minute. We are losing." "What do we need to win?" Tanaka asks. 3 more hours. 3 hours to fabricate proper seals for the failing bulkheads. 3 hours to get temporary patches in place. 3 hours we do not have because the water is rising now, and in 3 hours we will have lost too many pumps to flooding. Mathematics. Cold. Precise. Unforgiving. Tanaka looks at the plotting table. Kure is still 200 miles away. At 15 knots, that is 13 hours. They do not have 13 hours. Maybe they do not have 13 minutes. Keep pumping, Tanaka orders. Because what else can he say? 6:17 in the morning, 3 hours after impact. The list has reached 13 degrees. The deck is now noticeably sloped. Walking requires holding railings. Loose objects have tumbled starboard. Coffee cups, tools. Anything not secured has become a slow-motion avalanche, and now a new disaster. The flooding has reached the forward aviation fuel storage tanks. 6,000 gallons of high-octane gasoline meant for the carrier's aircraft, stored below the waterline for safety, sealed in steel tanks that were supposed to be watertight. Were supposed to be. The fuel begins leaking, not from the tanks themselves, from the piping, from the valves, from the connections that were installed hastily by workers who knew the ship was leaving early and rushed their work because what else could they do? Gasoline floats. Gasoline does not mix with seawater. Gasoline spreads across the surface of the water in the flooded compartments like an iridescent sheet of death. And gasoline produces fumes. Sweet, chemical, toxic. Fumes that are heavier than air. Fumes that displace oxygen. Fumes that can knock a man unconscious in seconds. Fumes that are one spark away from an explosion that would split Yamashiro in half. Akira is in boiler room 5 when the smell hits. He has never smelled gasoline in this concentration before. It fills his nose, his throat, his lungs, makes him dizzy, makes the world spin. Around him, men start collapsing. One moment standing, working, living. The next moment, falling into the contaminated water. Unconscious. Drowning in gasoline and seawater. The petty officer yells, "Out! Everyone, out! This space is lost. Move!" Akira runs, stumbles. His legs do not work right. The fumes have him halfway to unconscious. He grabs a railing, pulls himself up a ladder. Fresh air. He needs fresh air. Behind him, 3 men do not make it out. Young men, old men, does not matter. The fumes do not discriminate. By the time Akira reaches the main deck and breathes clean ocean air, 3 more sailors are dead. Not from torpedoes, not from enemy action, from gasoline leaking into flooded spaces because the ship left port before it was ready. Watanabe reports this to Tanaka, adds it to the growing list of catastrophes. We have to shut down all electrical systems in the forward section. One spark and the fuel vapor will ignite. The explosion would be, he does not finish, does not need to. Tanaka orders it. Darkness in the forward section, no power, no lights, no pumps, no ventilation. Just darkness and rising water and the smell of gasoline. Men work in the dark now. Work by touch, work by memory, work knowing that every breath might be their last if there is a spark. 8:17 in the morning, 5 hours after impact. The list has reached 18 degrees. The sun is rising. Dawn light reveals the full extent of the disaster. From the bridge, Tanaka can see the flight deck tilted like a ramp, can see equipment that has slid starboard and piled against the edge, can see men moving carefully clinging to railings, understanding now that their ship is dying. The 3 escort destroyers have returned. They found nothing. The American submarine is gone, escaped. The destroyers pick up positions around Yamashiro, waiting, ready to take survivors when the order comes. If the order comes. Tanaka has been a naval officer for 22 years, has commanded 4 ships, has fought in 3 major battles. He knows ships, knows the sea, knows when a vessel can be saved and when it cannot. Yamashiro cannot be saved. The mathematics are clear. The flooding is accelerating. The list is increasing. The fuel contamination makes half the ship uninhabitable. The pumps are failing one by one as they flood. They are 200 miles from Kure, with maybe 2 hours before capsizing. Tanaka calls Watanabe to the bridge. Sato as well, his senior officers. The men who need to hear this directly. "Gentlemen," Tanaka says quietly, Give me your honest assessment. Can we save her? Silence. Long silence. Finally, Watanabe speaks. No, Captain, I am sorry, but no. The flooding has progressed too far. Even if we had calm seas and no further damage, we would sink before reaching Kuri. And we do not have calm seas. The stress on the hull from the list is causing new fractures. New leaks. It is accelerating. Sato adds. The crew? They are exhausted. 5 hours of damage control. They cannot maintain this pace. Tanaka nods. He knew this, has known it for 2 hours. But a captain does not abandon his ship based on intuition. He abandons based on the counsel of his officers and the evidence of reality. Both tell him the same thing. Prepare abandoned ship procedures. Tanaka orders. Quietly, do not announce yet, but prepare. This is another moment to pause, to recognize, to honor. For those of you watching who have commanded, who have held the lives of others in your hands, who have made decisions knowing that some men would live and some would die based on your judgment. You understand what Captain Tanaka faces. There is no training that prepares you for this moment. The moment when you realize you will lose your ship. The moment when you must accept that some of your men will not come home. The moment when duty demands you stay until the end, even though every instinct screams to save yourself. This is command. This is the burden of leadership. This is what we ask of the men who wear the uniform and take the oath. American, Japanese. It does not matter. The burden is the same. If you have commanded, if you have led men in combat, if you have made the hard decisions, share your experience in the comments. Tell us about the moments that tested you. Tell us about the men you served with and the choices you made. We honor your service. We honor your sacrifice. We remember. Yamashiro continues dying. Slowly, methodically, mathematical. 10:17 in the morning. 7 hours after the torpedoes hit. The list has reached 30 degrees. Yamashiro is no longer a ship. She is a steel mountain falling sideways into the ocean. At 9 o'clock, Tanaka gave the order. Abandon ship. The words every captain prays he will never have to speak. But abandoning a ship this size, this damaged with over 2,000 men aboard, is not simple, is not clean, is chaos wearing the uniform of procedure. Many of the lifeboats were never fully installed. The ship left port incomplete. The boats that are installed cannot launch from the port side because of the list, can only launch from starboard. But starboard is tilted down toward the water. The boats crash, splinter, dump men into the sea. Life rafts are manually deployed, thrown overboard. Men jump after them, swim to them, cling to them. The water is cold, not freezing. This is not the North Atlantic, but cold enough to kill in a few hours if you are not rescued. The 3 destroyers close in, as close as they dare, picking up men, nets over the side, sailors hauling exhausted swimmers aboard. Professional, efficient, but limited. 3 destroyers cannot save 2,000 men quickly. Akira stands on the flight deck where the port rail meets the sky. The 30-degree list has brought this section of the deck 15 meters above the churning water below. What was once a level surface is now a steep slope, and Akira clings to a stanchion, looking down at the distance he must fall. An older sailor, one of the petty officers from damage control, stands beside him. The same man who saved Akira's life in the boiler room. The man's face is covered in soot and oil. Jump far, the petty officer says, his voice surprisingly calm. When she goes down, the suction will pull you under if you are too close. Jump far and swim fast. Akira nods, cannot speak. Terror has stolen his voice. You will be fine, the petty officer says. You are young, strong. You will make it. He pauses, looks at Akira directly. You will live to tell this story. Make sure you tell it right. Make sure people know we did everything we could. The petty officer does not say whether he himself will make it. Does not mention that he is 40 years old and has been awake for 30 hours and has been breathing gasoline fumes for 6. He does not need to say it. Akira understands. Akira jumps, pushes off hard from the deck. The fall seems to last forever. The wind rushing past, the water growing closer, time stretching like taffy, then cold, shocking cold. Water in his nose, his mouth, his lungs. Panic. The ocean swallowing him whole. Kicking, surfacing, gasping, swimming. Away from the ship. Away from the dying mountain of steel. He reaches a life raft. Other men pull him aboard. They sit there, wet, cold watching their ship die. On the bridge, Tanaka watches the evacuation, counts the men going over the side, estimates how many remain aboard. Watanabe finds him. "Captain, you must go. The ship will capsize soon. If you are aboard when it rolls, you will die." "How many men still aboard?" Tanaka asks. "Perhaps 300, perhaps 400. Then I stay until the 400th man is off." That is suicide. That is duty. Watanabe understands, has always understood. Tanaka is old school. Bushido. The code. The captain goes down with his ship, not because it is logical, but because it is right. "Then I stay also," Watanabe says. "No, you will go. That is an order. You have a wife, children. You will go, and you will tell them what happened here. You will make sure they know that Yamashiro's crew did everything possible, that we fought the water with everything we had, that this was not failure of courage, but failure of time and preparation." Watanabe wants to argue. Cannot. Tanaka has given an order. Watanabe salutes, turns to leave. But Tanaka stops him, places a hand on his shoulder. "Kenzo, old friend." Tanaka's voice softens. "Tell my wife that I thought of her in the end. Tell my daughters their father was proud of them. Tell them." He pauses, removes a small photograph from his breast pocket. His family. Wife and 2 daughters, ages 8 and 12, smiling in a garden in Yokohama. "Tell them I carried this every day, that they were with me always." He hands the photograph to Watanabe. Watanabe takes it with shaking hands, his eyes wet. "I will tell them, Captain. I swear it." Watanabe finds his way to the deck, jumps, swims to a destroyer that pulls him aboard. Sato stays, the executive officer. He will not leave his captain. They stand together on the bridge, watch the list increase, watch men jumping, watch the sun climbing in the sky, indifferent to the tragedy below. "It is a beautiful morning," Sato says quietly. "Yes," Tanaka agrees. "A good day to die if one must die." "Is there any other kind?" Tanaka considers this. "No, I suppose not." At 10:18, Yamashiro begins her final roll. The list has reached 35 degrees. Physics takes over. Gravity wins. The massive carrier tips. The flight deck, 900 feet of armored steel, becomes vertical, then inverted. The ship rolls completely onto her side. Men trapped inside are thrown against bulkheads. Crushed, drowned, killed by their own ship as it betrays them one final time. Tanaka and Sato are thrown from the bridge. They fall into the water together. Surface together, Tanaka is a strong swimmer despite his age. Sato is younger, stronger. But the ship is not done dying. Yamashiro floats there for a moment, belly up, exposing the hull to the sky. The massive propellers, each one 3 stories tall, rotate slowly in the air. A surreal image, an impossible image. The red-painted bottom of the hull stark against the blue morning sky. Then the stern rises. The bow goes down. Yamashiro begins her final dive. The suction is enormous, irresistible. The water around the sinking ship becomes a whirlpool. Men are pulled under despite their struggles, despite their life jackets, despite their will to live. Sato is pulled under, disappears beneath the surface, does not come back up. Tanaka swims, fights. But he is 42 years old and exhausted, and the ocean is stronger than any man has ever been. His last thought is of his daughters in the garden, of chrysanthemums, of sunlight through leaves. Then the ocean takes him. On his life raft 400 meters away, Akira watches the largest ship he has ever seen stand on end like a monument, watches the stern climb into the sky, propellers turning, water streaming from the hull, watches the bow disappear beneath the surface, pulling the rest of the ship down with it. And then with a sound like distant thunder, like the earth cracking open, like God sighing, Yamashiro slides beneath the Pacific Ocean and is gone. 10:57 in the morning, 72,000 tons, 2,176 men, 7 hours. Gone. The water where Yamashiro sank is covered with oil and debris and men, some swimming, some floating face down, some already gone. The oil creates rainbow patterns on the surface, beautiful and terrible. The smell of fuel and salt and death hangs in the air. The destroyers work frantically, picking up survivors, nets and ropes over the sides, sailors pulling exhausted men from the water. Professional, methodical, but there are so many, too many. 741 men will be saved. 1,435 will not. Captain Hiroshi Tanaka is not among the survivors. While Yamashiro died, USS Barracuda ran. Immediately after firing, Morrison took the boat deep, 200 feet, then 300, then 400, pushing the hull to its limits, running on battery power, silent, invisible. The destroyers came hunting, sonar pinging, active, aggressive, professional. Depth charges fell. Not close, not yet, but close enough to hear, close enough to feel the concussion through the hull, close enough to make every man aboard understand that death was searching for them. Morrison evaded. Change course, change depth. The cat and mouse game that submariners train for. The deadly ballet that sometimes ends with the submarine crushed like a tin can. But Morrison was good. His crew was good. And perhaps the Japanese destroyers were distracted by their dying carrier. Perhaps, after 2 hours, the depth charges stopped. The sonar pings faded. Barracuda continued running, continued evading, not surfacing, not yet, staying deep, staying hidden. Bobby Chen in the torpedo room reloaded the tubes with the 6 reserve torpedoes, shaking hands, exhausted, but alive. Mac in the engine room monitored the battery levels. Draining. They would need to surface soon, but not yet, not while destroyers might still be hunting. Dan Cooper at the plotting table calculated their position, calculated the route home, calculated whether they had enough battery to reach safe distance, and Morrison in the control room simply waited, calm, professional. The shot made, the target hit, the mission accomplished. 7 hours later, when Yamashiro finally sank, Barracuda was 80 miles away, running southeast, putting distance between themselves and the Japanese coast. They surfaced that night, recharged batteries, transmitted their patrol report, attacked large carrier with destroyer escort, fired 6 torpedoes, estimate 4 hits, target assessed as heavily damaged or sunk. The message was received at Pearl Harbor. Intelligence analysts were skeptical. A 70,000-ton carrier. No such ship existed in Japanese inventory. Must be an overestimate. Must be a cruiser or perhaps a smaller carrier. It would be months before they learned the truth. Months before intercepted Japanese communications confirmed it. Months before the scope of Morrison's success became clear. He had sunk Yamashiro, the largest aircraft carrier ever built. The greatest submarine kill in naval history. Redemption complete. 3 weeks later, Pearl Harbor. Morrison submits his patrol report in person. The intelligence officer reviewing it is polite but doubtful. Commander, your report indicates a carrier displacing approximately 70,000 tons. We have no intelligence suggesting such a ship exists. Morrison is calm. I know what I saw through the periscope. It was larger than any carrier in our recognition manuals. Perhaps a battleship converted. Perhaps I am reporting what I observed. The intelligence community can make their assessment. 6 months later, May 1945, confirmation, intercepted Japanese naval communications, prisoner interrogations, captured documents, all confirming the same thing. Yamashiro, hull number 110, 3rd Yamato-class ship converted to aircraft carrier, 72,000 tons, commissioned in November 19, 1944, sunk November 29, 1944. 10 days in service, lost with 1,435 crew. Sunk by USS Barracuda. Commander James Morrison commanding. Morrison receives the Navy Cross, 2nd highest decoration for valor. The ceremony is formal. Admiral presents the medal. Photographers capture the moment. Morrison stands at attention and feels nothing. Not pride, not vindication, just emptiness. Dan Cooper finds him afterward. You did it, Jim. You proved them wrong, proved yourself right. Morrison looks at the medal. Did I? Or did I just kill 1,400 men to make myself feel better about a mistake I made 2 years ago? That is war. I know, knowing does not make it easier. Bobby Chen makes it home. Sarah gives birth in June of 1945. A daughter. They name her Lucy. Bobby holds his daughter for the first time and cries and thanks God he survived to see this moment. Years later, Lucy will ask her father what he did in the war. Bobby will tell her about the torpedo room, about the night they sank the biggest ship in the Japanese Navy, about how scared he was, about how he thought he might never meet her. Lucy will grow up knowing her father is a hero. Bobby will grow up knowing he is just a man who got lucky. Mac retires after the war, opens a small engine repair shop in Oregon, lives quietly, dreams occasionally of submarine compartments flooding with gasoline fumes, wakes up and works on engines that do not kill anyone. When customers ask if he served, he says yes, but does not elaborate. Some stories are too heavy to share with strangers. Akira Yoshida survives, returns to Japan, to Hokkaido, to his mother's garden, tries to resume a normal life, cannot. The dreams do not stop. The memory of Yamashiro standing on end before sinking replays every night. The faces of the 3 men who died in the boiler room while he lived. The petty officer who told him to jump far and swim fast. Captain Tanaka who stayed aboard while others fled. He tries to tell people what happened, tries to write it down. The government forbids it. Yamashiro is classified, remains classified for decades. Officially, the ship never existed. The sailors who died aboard her are listed as killed in training accidents or on other vessels. Not until the 1970s does the full story emerge. By then, an Akira is 50 years old, has spent 30 years carrying a secret that wanted to be told. He finally publishes his memoir, titled The Ship That Died Too Young. In the memoir, he writes about the rushed departure, the incomplete watertight doors, the gasoline leak, the 7 hours of dying. He writes, Yamashiro did not need to die. If they had given us 3 more weeks, if they had let us complete the work, if they had not rushed us into the ocean incomplete and unprepared. But war makes men desperate, and desperate men make fatal decisions. I have spent my life wondering about those decisions. Who made them? Did they know? Did they care? I will never have answers. Only questions in the memory of watching the largest ship ever built slip beneath the waves while I sat on a life raft and lived. This story is not just about one submarine commander's redemption. This story is not just about one carrier's tragic end. This story is about what makes America different, what made us different then, what we hope still makes us different now. We believe in second chances. We believe that failure can teach. We believe that a man can fall and rise again. Commander Morrison failed in May of 1943. Most navies would have ended his career, would have decided that one failure revealed a fundamental flaw, would have moved him to a desk permanently, or discharged him entirely. The United States Navy gave him another boat, another command, another chance. That decision changed the war. That decision proved that second chances are not weakness. They are strength. They are the recognition that talent combined with wisdom gained from failure is more valuable than talent alone. This is the American ideal. This is what we built a nation on. The idea that your past does not define your future, that redemption is possible, that growth is real. For those of you watching who have failed at something important, who have made mistakes that cost you dearly, who have wondered if you deserve another chance, this story is for you. You do. You deserve the second chance, the third chance, as many chances as it takes to get it right. Because that is what we do. That is who we are. That is the promise of America. Morrison proved that promise was not empty. USS Barracuda continued patrols until Japan surrendered in August 1945. She survived the war, was eventually decommissioned, was used as a target ship and sunk in 1968. Morrison survived the war, continued his naval career, retired as a captain in 1955, died in 1982 at age 73. His obituary mentioned the Navy Cross, but not the story behind it. Some victories are too private to share. Yamashiro lies somewhere in the Pacific, 4,000 meters down. Never found, never recovered. The exact coordinates of her sinking were not precisely recorded. She remains there still, a tomb for 1,400 men, a monument to the cost of rushing, a reminder that preparation matters. The record Morrison set still stands. Largest warship ever sunk by a submarine, 72,000 tons. A record that will probably never be broken because aircraft carriers are no longer built this large, and submarine warfare has evolved into something different. But the lesson remains, the lesson about second chances, about redemption through excellence, about the American belief that past failure does not determine future success. That lesson is eternal. We close with this question for everyone watching. What does second chance mean to you? Have you been given one? Have you given one? Have you needed one and been denied it? For those who served, did you ever serve with someone who got a second chance and made good? Or someone who needed a second chance and never got it? For those who led, did you ever give someone a second chance? Did they prove worthy of it? Share your story in the comments. Tell us about redemption. Tell us about second chances. Tell us about the times you failed and rose again, or watched someone else do the same. We read every comment. We honor every story, because this is not just history. This is life, your experience, your journey through failure and success and the space between. And we remember, we honor, we learn. Remember the 1,400 Japanese sailors who died aboard Yamashiro because their nation rushed them to sea unprepared. They served with honor. They died doing their duty. They deserve to be remembered. Remember the 60 American submariners aboard Barracuda who trusted their commander's second chance, who believed redemption was possible, who helped make it real. Remember Commander James Morrison, who failed, who learned, who got another chance and did not waste it. And remember the lesson, the eternal American lesson. Second chances are not weakness. They are strength. They are wisdom. They are the foundation of a nation built on the idea that who you become matters more than who you were. That is the legacy of that November night in 1944, when one submarine fired 6 torpedoes and 4 hit, and the largest carrier ever built died in 7 hours, and one man's redemption became history. Remember it, honor it, live it, because second chances matter. They matter for nations. They matter for individuals. They matter for all of us who have ever failed and needed the grace to try again. This is the story of the shot that could not miss. The story of 72,000 tons in 10 days and 4 torpedoes in 7 hours, and one commander's second chance. This is history. This is memory. This is meaning. Remember,